That one's drilled deep to right field.
Hurts going deep for it all. Devontae Smith. He has been fantastic in this fourth. Wow.
A break in on goal, and he scores.
What's good, ladies and gentlemen? Hope you all are doing well on this Wednesday night. And I'm your host, Zachary Chapey, back with another episode of Two Mics All Sports. Joe is out sick tonight, so I'm joined by a very special guest, Santino. What's going on, man?
How's it going, Zach? I'm honored and privileged to be here today.
So we're going to get right into it. We're going to be giving you guys our NFL Wildcard Reactions. Obviously, it was Wildcard Weekend this weekend. I gave my reactions to each of the games individually, but there's some storylines that I got out of each of these games that we are here to talk about. So first and foremost, we're going to get right into it. We're going to talk about Saturday's game. First and foremost, the first thing I have for you, Santino, is what did Bryce Young prove in his matchup versus the Rams? What do you feel about after that game, especially after the Rams being 10-point favorites and the Panthers only losing by 3 points?
You know, as a extremely unbiased New York Giants fan, I have a lot of, I actually like the Panthers a lot. I think Bryce Young proved that he actually can be in that upper echelon of great quarterbacks in this league. It's really unfortunate that they lost. I actually thought they were going to pull that one out at the end of it. But I think, for me at least, that game said more about what the Rams defense is going to look like moving forward than how good Bryce Young can be. But I do think that he can go out there and be one of the better quarterbacks in this league, especially after that game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in the sense because the one issue with Bryce Young this season was his inconsistencies, not only as a quarterback, but his team as a whole. Like, perfect example, they played the Rams in Week 13, easily their biggest win of the year, easily probably, I think, the biggest upset of the year, because how fire the Rams were and how, like, the Panthers were kind of that sketchy team that, like, they looked like they were going to go to the playoffs, but they really needed that win to solidify themselves, and they went and did that. But then the following week, basically, they had the Saints, which they pretty much, in a sense, could have locked up the division, and they blow a 17-7 lead against the Saints. And although the Saints have looked impressive, the Panthers, the way they've shown us this year, they're beating better teams. Like, they knocked off the Rams and stuff like that. They have impressive wins, but then they also have embarrassing losses. So, but for this game as a whole, I think Bryce Young showed us a lot. He was in the pocket himself. He was a really good quarterback. What he was able to do with what he had, yes, they didn't look great at first, but then when they finally found their stride, he looked well. And another guy, I think a bigger story we're going to talk about is these guys who are emerging this season that are going to have big roles next season. Jalen Croker is one of that guys who had a massive game. Like, obviously, Ted McMillan is going to be up for Rookie of the Year. He had a great rookie season, but you knew what you were expecting out of him. Jalen Croker, we knew he was a good receiver, but he bursted onto the scene when he came back from injury this year. And what he was able to do in that game as a whole, what he was able to do for Bryce Young, because obviously Bryce Young's turnover was on him. It was almost on him. It was all on him. But then after, to respond to that, I even called. I was texting my one buddy. I was like, the Panthers need a big shot, and they need it to Jalen Croker, and they got it on that 50-yard pass, and that's exactly what got him into the game. But I think the one impressive thing that I saw out of Bryce Young was that rushing touchdown he had. The willingness to get out of the pocket and make that play for the rushing touchdown, the stadium exploded. While I will wrap things up, though, with this Panthers thing, the Panthers have a future. They just need to build correctly. Rico Dowdle, you have to bring him back. Although he was not a non-factor in the playoffs, he's most of the reason you got to the playoffs for what he did in the first half of the season. You have him and Chuba Hubbard. Maybe find one more solidified wide receiver. Find yourself maybe a legit tight end. Upgrade the offensive line here and there. And then you have a solid defense. What Mike Jackson was able to do for them this season and in that playoff game is insane. Him turning back the clock. You have a legit lockdown corner in J.C. Horn. And then building the surrounding pieces that are on Derek Brown and such. This Panthers team has a good future. They just have to build the team correctly because they made the playoffs this year. This is great experience for them. But let me ask you this before we move on to my second thing. It's already came out. The Panthers are giving him his fifth-year option. Do you think he deserves a contract extension, or do you think you need one more impressive, consistent season out of him?
I definitely think he needs another consistent season. They got to the playoffs this year, yes, but if you really look at it, 8-9 is not like a playoff team record. And like you said, the inconsistency was atrocious throughout the entire season. Some games I value consistency in my quarterback over a lot of other things. So I feel like for the Panthers, it was smart they did that, and they needed to give them another season to prove they can be a consistently good quarterback and to lead this Panthers team.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's not hard to win that NFC South division. I mean, I kind of predicted the Falcons to win it the past few years, and obviously that hasn't happened. But still, like, that division's so easy to win. But I think if they make the right moves this offseason, they easily could be the forefront of that division, not just winning it on the final week. Like, you know it's bad when you have to rely on another team to help you win the division. So, but the second thing I want to move on is the Rams, like you mentioned this a little bit, is the Rams defense concerning and a possible issue?
You know, I gotta say yeah, because yes, Bryce Young, like we said, is inconsistent. Yes, I mean, he's the best, but in the playoffs, you take everything out of the window. You have to play your best football, and that defense did not hold up to the standards that they should have. They have the MVP Matt Stafford on their team, who's leading them on offense. Their defense gave them no support, and like they say, defense wins championships. You can't have a team that has a god-awful defense throughout the playoffs and to have a quarterback who's balling and expect to win these games. Like costly turnover for Bryce Young and like other things won them that game. They didn't deserve to win that game. I honestly think the Panthers deserved to win that game more than the Rams did because of how bad their defense played. So if I'm McVay, I'm sitting the defense down and I'm saying, hey guys, we gotta pull it together before next game. Especially they're in a tough matchup now, and it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more because coming into this game, I've been so impressed on how this Rams defense has been able to been built by Les Snead and the GM after Aaron Donald retired. I thought it was going to be tough to build that foundation of the defense, but the draft pick of Jared Verse, them bringing, I'm trying to think the other guy, Braden Fisk, and then they have guys like Byron Young and such like that they've built this foundation on, and then they brought in Nate Landman. Like, their defense has been one of their better, one of the better units in the entire NFL, and it kind of completely disappointed them in that game. And if you think about it, these offenses are only getting better. Yes, Chicago. You bring up Chicago. Yes, Chicago is very inconsistent, but who's to say Stafford maybe has a couple picks like he did in the Panthers game? This Bears offense can get fire in the fourth quarter and completely change the game like that. This defense, like you said, I think McVay needs to sit down, figure out what happened in that game, make sure it doesn't happen in this next game, because Chicago will burn that for you easily. Like, Bryce Young, although, yes, he played a good game, and I think the Panthers played that game to deserve and win that game, Caleb Williams is a young quarterback as well, but he's not going to, I think, make mistakes that Bryce Young makes or this offense makes. Like, Panthers, yes, Bryce Young has been there for a few years, but their wide receivers are kind of inexperienced, like Jalen Croker, Ted McMillan, and even it came down when his best throw was to Jimmy Horn, which he dropped that on fourth down. Like, so, but bouncing from their defense to their offense, do the Rams have the best offense in the playoffs?
It's kind of, for me, it's like race between them and the Seahawks. But I value on an offense, to me at least, if I say I have a good offense, I want the best quarterback in the NFL leading that offense. So I do think the Rams have the best offense in the playoffs and probably in the entire NFL. You know, they have, obviously, like I've mentioned a few times, the MVP Matt Stafford, and then they have Puka Nacua, who had 2 touchdowns in that game. He is incredible. He's, in my opinion, a top 3 wide receiver in the NFL. And when you have that combo, along with Kyron Williams, who's one of the better running backs in the NFL, I don't think there's any stopping this Rams offense. Like you said, Stafford throws a few picks, and that defense plays well. It could all collapse, but I do think that offense is the best.
Yeah. And I mean, I couldn't agree more. I don't even think it's the talent. I think it's what Sean McVay is able to do with the packages. A 3 tight end package? Where do you see that in the league between Terrence Ferguson, Tyler Higbee, and Colby Parkinson, the emergence he's had this season for them? And then it's even to the point where they don't even have Devontae Adams or Puka Nacua on the field. They have freaking Muntfield on the field, and then they have another guy. Like, there's so many setups where they have that it works perfectly, and it doesn't even have to be, like, when do you see an offense that is very loaded able to run different kind of sets without their star players being on the field and it being able to work successfully. I find it insane. And like you said, the only issue they might encounter is Stafford giving it to the other team because he has a tendency to. But if he doesn't do that, it's going to be tough to stop this Rams offense. No matter the weather, no matter where they are, home or away, they're going to be deadly. They have been all year. They're going to continue to be unless Stafford turns the ball over. The one thing I will say, though, that they didn't do that much in the Panthers game, if they find that run game, you can, good luck. It's going to be impossible to stop them. So, but moving on to the second Saturday game, obviously, before I even get into the talking points, Chicago's 2025 season has been revolved around their comeback. Coming into this game, they had 6 comebacks after being down at least into the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter. So they have 6 fourth quarter comebacks. But this looked like it was going to be a Packers dominance. They were up 21-3, but once again, you can basically call them the cardiac bears at this point. They were down 21-6 at one point. But this brings me into my first point that I have about this. How do you feel about the Bears moving forward? Obviously, they came back, but is this thing that they're doing all year sustainable throughout the rest of the playoffs?
Now, there's 2 sides to this. As I mentioned, I am a Giants fan, and my philosophy is if you were one of the teams, the many teams like this season that the Giants blew a lead to, you are a fraud. We're going to get to one of those teams later, most likely, and the Bears are one of those teams. I do not think they are going to get, I think that they're going to get smacked by the Rams. And if they don't, they're going to have another fourth quarter comeback. And that's what I was about to say. Just because, like, these fourth quarter comebacks, I say this all the time, they're frauds, it's not sustainable. There's 4 quarters at the end of the day. You could be down 100-0 in the third quarter, but if you score 101 points in that fourth quarter, win the game, you can't say that you won the game. And I personally don't think it's going to be sustainable, but at the end of the day, there's 4 quarters in a football game, and anything can happen. And Caleb Williams, I will say, is the most clutch player in the NFL. He's done nothing, at least this season, but nothing would show that he's clutch. And you could be up 50-0, and I would not be comfortable going against the Bears. You have to really sit down, especially in that fourth quarter, and tell your defense, don't let them score. You guys really need to lock it in.
Yeah, and that's like insane. Another thing that I want to bring up about these comebacks, literally everything that needs to go wrong goes wrong for the other team. Like, Brandon McManus, he's a great kicker, but he was terrible that night. Obviously, the weather's not great there, but like, between the 50-yarder, which I think is tough, but then the extra point, and then another kick miss, like, all this crazy, and then Caleb Williams pulling that throw out of his ass on 4th down 27-16 to keep them alive. Where do you see other quarterbacks doing that? Like, I think it basically comes down to the point everything that needs to happen for them happens. And it's like, these teams, like, it's not even like the coach can say anything about it. It's like, this brings me into my next question. Like, where do the Packers go from here? Because it's like, Chicago, Green Bay had that game in the bag, had the other game in the bag, blew that. Matt LaFleur obviously is still in the fold, but there's other head coaches out there, specifically John Harbaugh, that they've been very interested to. Even with Matt LaFleur still in the system, obviously you have Jordan Love. Whatever you want to do with Malik Willis, because he's a free agent, the team might bring him in. And then you finally saw something out of Matthew Golden. You're going to have a returning Tucker Kraft. You should have Micah Parsons by next year. Where do the Packers go from here?
See, for me, if I'm the Packers, what I'm doing is you guys need to go all in. And you really have to believe that this is the team. Yes, they just blew a lead to the Bears, but at the same time, that game, they could replay that game right now, and that never happens. Nothing that happened in that game would happen, and you could say, they didn't have Micah Parsons, so it doesn't count. They lost Micah Parsons. Injuries is part of the game. You can't say, they have Micah Parsons in the game because you don't know that. But I do think that a lot of the coordinators are going to get switched around from that, the offense and defense. But if I'm the Packers, going all in, getting Jordan Love, or getting him all the help he can possibly
Yeah. Yeah, Brandon McManus, Temple alumni right there. Way to represent, yeah. So, no, but you bring up the point about the Super Bowl. I actually had them in my Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos winning because I thought this Micah Parsons trade was like the Von Miller to the Rams trade, like the missing piece. And at the beginning of the season, that's the way it looked. They were 5-1-1. They looked like one of the better teams, but then when they lost Micah Parsons to that injury, they lost 4 straight games, and they just looked like they lost everything. Like, Micah Parsons not only affected the defense, but he affected the offense too. Like, that's how massive of a player and addition he was to this team. And like you said, yeah, you can keep LaFleur around. I don't think there's an issue with that. He's the perfect coach for this team. But it's now or never with Jordan Love. He showed strides this season, but then he also showed very bad, like against the Cleveland Browns. That was an embarrassment loss, I think, in my opinion. It's like Jordan Love, he shows stuff, but then he looks like an average quarterback. Jordan Love needs to go into next season, and my honest opinion, he needs to be the MVP of next season. He needs to be that superstar quarterback. He needs to play better all season instead of in freaking Toyotathon. It's that plain and simple. So, but I want to move on to the Sunday headlines that I have. First and foremost, we had the Bills-Jaguars game. I thought that was going to be the best game. It was a pretty good game. Came down to the wire. But my first thing I have for you, Santino, is are the Bills the best team remaining in the field? And is this finally Josh Allen's time?
No, I didn't think it was his time. But then I was sitting down getting ready to watch the game. I thought, I was like, wow, the Jaguars win this game. They're already just like the hottest team in the NFL. They might take this thing all the way. But I thought about it, I was like, wait, if the Bills win this game, they also might take this thing all the way. Do I think this is Josh Allen's year? Still no, because it's Josh Allen, and I don't think he's going to get a ring unless he somehow like becomes a backup for 10 years, whatever, 10 years. I don't think he's going to be able to do it. But if there were to be a year, this is the year that they need to win a ring. And if they don't get that ring, it's going to taint Josh Allen's reputation and career for as long as he lives until he gets that ring. Because this is the weakest the playoffs have been in a long time.
Exactly, and I completely agree. And with them beating the Jaguars, I'm sorry, they have zero excuses. They should beat the Broncos. I know you're talking about that's another team that the Giants blew a lead to, and I've been harping on them for weeks. They are the biggest fraud in the playoffs, I think. These 1 seeds I don't trust as far as I can throw them. It's that plain and simple. Denver has had too many one-score games to trust for that to stay sustainable in the playoffs. They freaking had the Raiders in one-score games in both games. The Raiders, the worst team in the NFL, were in one-score games in both games against Denver. So this should be an easy road for Josh Allen to get to the AFC Championship. But for if Houston goes and beats New England in Foxborough, I'm taking Houston in that matchup 100%. That defense destroyed Josh Allen on Thursday Night Football in the season. They would do it again. And another thing is, the Jaguars, they seem to figure out James Cook. James Cook was a non-factor in that game. It was strictly on Josh Allen and the plays he was able to make. Obviously, Brandon Cooks in the big 2026, I guess, is making plays. You got Khalil Shakir, who's good, and then they had the 2 tight ends, but they lost Terrell Shavers. Gabe Davis, I don't think, is playing the rest of the season. So it's going to be on Josh Allen literally having to be Superman. I know he's done it in the past, but this is your time now. No Mahomes, no Lamar, no Burrow. We've harped on this forever. He is the most experienced quarterback in the playoffs and probably the overall best with all the intangibles that he offers. This is his final time to do it. You have Denver. You should beat them. And then it depends on who you face in the AFC Championship. If it's the Patriots, I like them in that matchup. If it's the Texans, I don't like them in that matchup. So, but moving on to the Jaguars, is Trevor Lawrence holding the Jags back from their full potential?
Absolutely not. I think Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback. That interception that he threw where Jacoby Myers dropped that ball, I was appalled. I think it was at the end of the game. I was like, what are you doing? I think Trevor Lawrence is a great quarterback. I have been on his since he got drafted. I've been saying, oh, he's not great. This season, he proved that he started off really slow, but he picked it up, and if he can play how he played in all over people like, oh, it's Trevor Lawrence's fault they lost. Oh, it's Trevor Lawrence. It was not Trevor Lawrence's fault. He played well, and he is a great quarterback. I also just think he also doesn't have like the greatest passes around him. I think they can be better, and I honestly think they will do better, especially after how much preseason they had this season.
Yeah, I agree in the sense where like his targets and stuff like that, because no one really expected Brian Thomas Jr. to have the sophomore slump that he did, and if it wasn't for Parker Washington's emergence and for them trading Jacoby Myers at the trade deadline, who's to say the Jags are even in the playoffs? But then, yeah, I think Trevor really picked it up. I think Liam Cohen just knows what works for these quarterbacks because he had Baker Mayfield throwing 40 touchdowns last year, close to 4,000 yards, and then Trevor Lawrence had 38 total touchdowns this year. Liam Cohen is a quarterback whisperer. He's one of those guys like a Sean McVay, a Kevin O'Connell. I think he's one of those guys who's an offensive-minded mind and can get the best out of his quarterbacks. So I think the Jaguars, they're going to get Travis Hunter back. That'll be huge for them. They got to decide what they want to do with Jacoby Myers. Parker Washington is an emerging number 1, number 2 receiver, so you've got to use him. Brenton Strange is good. Travis Etienne is good. They have the offense, and then they have pieces on defense, maybe just making the changes there. They are the best team, I think, in the AFC South. They just have to stay healthy next year, and I think they can repeat as champs again. So, but let's move on to the next game, San Francisco and the Eagles. The first thing I'm going to ask you is for the 49ers. How much longer can the 49ers survive with all these injuries?
So, I just want to point out this is my favorite game of the playoffs. But that's the last point. The Niners, this injury situation, there has to be some work of dark magic. There's got to be someone who had a personal grudge against the Niners and decided we're going to let them have no one. The only reason they are still in this is the fact that Christian McCaffrey decided because every other year he gets hurt. Like next season, put my money on it. Clock this. He will play next season. He'll play 2 games. He's gonna be hurt all season next season. But they're never gonna be able to be like as good as they could be because of all the injuries they're having. Is this also because of the fact that they keep bringing in players who have a history of injuries? Yes. Is it still not their fault? No, they're getting. It's the work of our magic. That's the only excuse they have. The one that the Chiefs had like 2 seasons ago or whatever it was. The Niners have had that in the worst way possible for the last however many years, and it's honestly just sad to see. But I don't think that they're going to be able to last much longer with their injuries, especially with the injury George Kittle was terrible, especially in the playoffs. Having one of the greatest hands of all time go down is obviously a blow.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think it's the sense where the more players that get injured, the stronger Christian McCaffrey gets at this point. I think that's what it comes down to, and I think depending on the caliber of the player, McCaffrey gets even more powered up. I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. Yes, I don't think it's going to be sustainable. Kyle Shanahan, I think he should be the coach of the year for what he's been able to do with this roster. And Brock Purdy, he's found that rushing ability about him as a quarterback, and it works to perfection. And now, obviously, I don't think it's going to be Seattle. It's going to be a tough matchup, but if they can find any bit of offensive identity, I do not trust Sam Darnold as far as I can throw him. And this is his first real taste of playoff football. He's going to be home. It's going to be different from when he was with Minnesota last year. But he still was top 5 in interceptions. I don't trust him. If San Francisco can win this game, I wouldn't be shocked. They did it a few years ago against Green Bay when no one picked them to win that game in the 2021 divisional. I could see this being more of the same, in my opinion. So, but let's get into it. This is not even a storyline. This is just how I feel. First and foremost, February 19th, 2025, the day the Eagles hired Kevin Patullo, the day everything went downhill. So my take is the Eagles should feel embarrassed as as a team / organization. Obviously, I know you take a different angle on this, but for the Eagles, how do you think fans should feel about the team and organization? Because as a fan, I feel completely embarrassed.
I have a lot I can say about the Eagles, and I'm going to throw something out that you're not going to like. Do I think Patullo was bad? Yes. Do I think he was the problem? No. I don't think you can, because every time, it also just helps that I'm things that have been consistent throughout all these years. Yes. I have I have a lot I can say about the Eagles. I don't hate the Eagles as much as I should as a Giants fan, but I can't stand this narrative that Tua is the devil and he's like the worst person ever. But the Eagles should feel ashamed that they lost this game. They faced an injury-riddled 49ers team, and any other day of the week they should win this game. First drive, Quinton Mitchell's all pros getting speed blitzed, and Brock Purdy's looking like LeBron, and he's throwing all these. I'm like, what is going on? You made Brock Purdy look like the best quarterback in the NFL when he's one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the NFL. So I would feel ashamed, and I want to extend a true I'm sorry for you because you're one of the Eagles fans I can tolerate because you don't rub it in people's faces. So thank you, and I'm sorry.
Well, I appreciate that. Obviously, I am embarrassed. I talked about that, but there is a lot that I need to get into about this team. Obviously, I've taken the angle so far of being very conservative. If I can be completely honest with you, I usually wear my jersey every game. The final game I wore this season was the Chargers game. That was my last straw. Excuse me, it wasn't even that. I went from wearing the jersey the last game, then to this game, I gave them a chance by wearing an Eagles shirt, like a jersey t-shirt, and then they disappointed me again. So I haven't worn a jersey since. I haven't given them, and it worked, but then it also hasn't worked. But this is something that I just have to get off my chest. Nick Sirianni, you wanted your starters rested. They're rested now, dumbass. They are. They are, buddy, because now you're rested all the way to freaking Cancun. So I hope you're happy about that. There's so much more I want to say, but I want to keep this family friendly. But the one thing you do mention about Kevin Patullo, I do think it's not completely his fault because he is the scapegoat, just like Brian Johnson was the scapegoat. It's pretty self-explanatory why this has happened. He is the puppet, and Nick Sirianni is the puppet master. And then I want to mention about Jalen Hurts. I think, yes, Jalen, a lot of people don't think he's the best quarterback. I like him as our quarterback of our team, but I think he was put in a straitjacket this year. That's how I feel about it. I think there was a lot of opportunities to let him unleash, and they didn't do it. The Minnesota game was a perfect example of they let him loose, and you saw what he did in that game. Brian Flores is one of the best defensive coordinators when it comes to sending the blitz, and Jalen was ready for it. He had a perfect passer rating, close to 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. And then you bring up the point about A.J. Brown. How about you worry about catching the ball, buddy? How about that? Because obviously I was pissed off after Sunday, so I was basically like the kid that they interviewed, saying, "Pack your bags. It was good having you. We'll talk to you later." I've kind of changed my vantage point. I would love to have him back now. I would be interested in it. But if a team is offering me 2 first-round picks, I don't know, man. That might be something I have to accept because I looked at the numbers, and as of right now, the numbers are this. If we were to trade A.J. Brown before June 1st, our cap hit would be $23.4 million. Our dead cap hit would be $43.5 million, and we'd be saving $20 million. A post-June 1st trade, we would be the dead cap would be $16,000. The $16,000, and we would save $7,000. We would save $7 million. So there's an appeal to trading him for the deal you could get back. But I think it's in a sense where, like, if you can find the right offensive coordinator, and this is another thing. This is the last thing I want to say about the Eagles. No matter who they bring in as offensive coordinator, Brian Dable, Mike McDaniel, Todd Monken, whoever the hell they bring in, that's just a Band-Aid on the situation. You're not fixing the whole situation. Obviously, Nick Sirianni won you a Super Bowl, but did he really win you that Super Bowl? Did he really bring you to the Super Bowl in 2022? I don't think so. That was Shane Steichen, and that was Kellen Moore. Because you see perfect examples. When Daniel Jones was healthy, he looked like a Pro Bowl quarterback with Shane Steichen as his offensive coordinator. And I know you couldn't even believe it. So, and then we had, for example, Tyler Shuck. He looked great on that 4-game win streak with Kellen Moore as his offensive coordinator. So I think you're just putting a Band-Aid on the situation. You're not fixing the real problem, and that is Nick Sirianni as his head coach. I don't think he'll be fired, because if he was going to get fired, he'd be fired by now. But at the end of the day, if we keep this trend up, say we hire Brian Dable or Mike McDaniel. We go to the Super Bowl. We win the Super Bowl. One of those guys just gets a head coaching job and they're out the door. We're back to square one because Nick Sirianni then probably would be in control. My honest opinion, if you want to keep Nick Sirianni on as the coach, you strip him from everything. He's basically just the head coach of this football team. That's how I feel. So that's basically what I wanted to get off my chest about things. But there's a lot more I could say. I'm going to keep it, like I said, family friendly because if I started some of the things I want to say, it would be insane. But let's just move on. So the last talking point that I want to ask you about is from the Sunday night game. I have, or two actually. If the Pats reach their full potential on offense, should they be the favorite?
So, I have a lot of. To answer your question, no. I do not think that this Patriots team is as good as they are, as good as they seem. Drake May, obviously, second MVP, always having a great season. Yeah, he's cool, but, I don't really think that this Patriots offense is that good. Stephon Diggs is nowhere near as good as he was. The only bright spot I see, for me at least, that would make me believe that this is okay, they are scary, is if they can have Travion Henderson play how he was for that stretch of games where he was going off. If they have that, yes, they're scary. I don't think they're a threat. Putting up 16 points on the Chargers, I have no faith in the Patriots team. I don't even think they're winning this game that they're about to play. I really don't. They're about to play a Houston Texans team that just utterly humiliated the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they have probably the best defense we've seen in the last 7+ years. Do I think they'll win this game? Absolutely not. If it is, then I'm starting to get worried. If the Patriots win this game, then I'm worried. But I'd be willing to put a lot of money this Houston Texans team is going to bully Drake May into submission.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think their defense looked very impressive against the Chargers, but this Chargers team is basically dead. We'll get a little bit into it more, but their offensive line has been battered up. Justin Herbert has a terrible playoff reputation. Their defense is what's going to keep them. I think it's defense versus defense in this matchup against Houston. It's the defenses are going to give you stellar performances. It's just which offense can give you more. Obviously, it's huge that Nico Collins is possibly out for this game. Hopefully, he's able to suit up for this game against the Patriots because his concussion was pretty bad. But I think it's in the sense where Drake May just did not impress me in that playoff game. He just played little bits of the here and there, but that interception he had on the first drive, or that early on, was terrible. It was god awful. And then it kind of was relying on, like you said, Travion Henderson wasn't that great. Ramondre Stevenson was pretty solid. Like this offense, except for maybe the throw he made to Hunter Henry for the touchdown, Drake May just did not impress me like I thought he was going to. I thought this game was going to be a blowout, but it literally came down to the fourth quarter of this game. Like it was 6-3 at halftime, or like the game was very lackluster, and it didn't seem, the Patriots did not seem as impressive as I thought they were in this game. I thought this was easily going to be the snooze fest of the entire wild card, and it was, but not the way I was expecting. So, but moving on to our the final headlines. First, we're going to talk about the Texans from Monday night. Is this Texans defense so dominant enough to take them to the Super Bowl, or will the offense not do enough?
So, if you would have asked me this question before the playoffs started, I would have said yes. I actually had this Texans team making it to the Super Bowl and then ultimately losing in the Super Bowl to either the Rams or the Seahawks. But that's not over there. I don't know now because now this Buffalo Bills team, they beat the Jags, and if Josh Allen is gonna do something, this is the year. And yes, this defense is absolutely dominant, but I think with Josh Allen, I think they're gonna destroy the Broncos, and I think they're gonna be extremely hot after they just won again. They just won. Now they're on a 2-game streak. They're gonna play this Texans team, and it's gonna be a situation where can the defense contain Josh Allen as the offense tries to do something? This Texans offense
Yeah. Everything you're saying, I agree with times 10. They were in my Super Bowl pick. They're not in my Super Bowl pick. They were in my Super Bowl losing against the Rams. The only kryptonite they have is the Buffalo Bills. If the Broncos somehow sneak out a win against the Bills, then and whoever wins that Patriots-Texans game is going to the Super Bowl. I will have that pretty much solidified. But yes, this Houston's defense is ferocious. This is the best defense I've seen in a while. I think this is caliber of like 20. I think this is caliber of Legion of Boom. Like, this is how dominant their defense has been. And their offense has had spurts where it's looked good, but if they can get a 23, 24-point game out of their offense, they're winning the Super Bowl. It's that plain and simple. Their defense is literally so dominant. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter are the best pass rush duo in the NFL. Derek Stingley, elite corner. Kamari Lassiter, great corner. They have great players all over the field, and DeMeco Ryans is coaching this defense to perfection. And this offense, the biggest question is their offense. Can we, just like what the biggest story with the Eagles was, their offense. Obviously, we figured it out. It's their offense all season, and it's what's lost them. The Texans, their defense is strong enough. They just need a small production out of the Texans defense. But this last question I have, what should the Steelers do now? I know you have some points you want to talk about it, but you said you also have someone else who could give more expertise.
So, yeah, I'm going to just, for me, it's a situation where Tomlin stepped down now. Arthur Smith, who is god-awful. If I'm the Steelers, I'm rebuilding. It's finally time. Tomlin stepped down. Rodgers is either retiring or he's going to sign a one-year deal with some other team. You need to just I would try to just rebuild. You're going into a draft class next season that's going to be absolutely loaded, especially now with Dante Moore staying back another year at Oregon. This next draft is going to be insane, especially for quarterbacks. If I'm the Steelers, I'd either give the keys to Mason Rudolph for the season or sign a Malik Willis for the season. Then tank, get a good draft pick, and then hammer in on that draft, and then you're back to being competitive after a season or two. But they need to switch some things up. I know how the Steelers are, but I don't know enough. So, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to have my roommate, who's actually a diehard Steelers fan. He knows much more than I could ever say, and especially after watching that game with him, whatever he wants me to person slide over, I'll give you the reins.
Yeah. Hello. So, I've been watching the Steelers consistently every game. I was about 8 years old. That was about 2014, 2015. So I've watched Tomlin underperform with Prime Ben Roethlisberger, Le'Veon Bell, and Tony Ronald are fine. So it kind of irritates me when, now that Tomlin has stepped down, which I'll get more into in a second, but Tomlin steps down, everybody's like, oh, what quarterback did Tomlin have since Ben Roethlisberger's retirement? He had Kenny Pickett, he had a bunch of other randoms, I'm not going to lie. Quarterbacks don't matter. And it's like, yeah, you didn't give him a good roster, but he had a good roster for years. He inherited an amazing roster from the previous coach. The previous coach that retired, Bill Cowher, came off of a Super Bowl win. He inherited a Super Bowl winning roster, a young quarterback who just, again, won a Super Bowl, and he had a dominant defense, and he won a ring. Back in 2009, but he won a ring. And I think people are so quick to grab, just flash onto that, something that happened over 15 years ago, and be like, well, we have to keep it. He did it once, he did it again. But he has always underperformed the playoffs. He's not been able to beat teams that we should beat with top 5 roster in the NFL. And obviously he's lost 7 playoff games in a row and stepped down. And I've been saying this for years. I thought the Steelers should rebuild after Roethlisberger retired. I thought that was a good time. Roethlisberger's gone. You can tell the team's not as good as it was maybe a few years ago. Now's the time to rebuild, but they didn't want to do that because the standard for Pittsburgh, and they were stuck between going 9-8 and 7 every year. But honestly, I think now that Tomlin's gone, I don't think we're going to do great next year. I think we're going to maybe see 5, 6, 16. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, oh, that's what you get for firing Tomlin. But it's a necessary step to eventually have a Super Bowl winning roster. Because the way we were doing it was not going to work. And honestly, what I think the Steelers should do now that Tomlin's gone is get a coach that maybe is offensive minded, even if it's a defensive minded coach. Get a young guy who is more modern, more innovative than Tomlin was, because we were stuck. Our offense was stuck in the 90s for the most part. Get someone who maybe from like the Rams. I know there was a defensive coordinator, Chris Shula, who I would actually personally like, and there's a passing coordinator for that same team that I think should be the OC, because I think that when the head coach comes in, he should choose his coordinators. I think the two we have now should be gone. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's not like, at least you know you're going to be bad. You can rebuild. You get young players. A lot of the like Rodgers, I don't think is coming back. I think he may be for Tomlin. So I think that's done. I think next year we honestly should roll with Bill Howard. We took him in the sixth. We took him in the 6th round last year, and he sat for a year behind Rodgers. He was able to learn. Even if Rudolph starts a couple games, whatever. I think Howard. What do you have to lose at this point? You really have nothing. And I think that eventually, especially like what Santino was saying about the draft class next year, there's so many quarterbacks right now that we can look at and be like, they can fall, even if the Steelers get like around the 15th or 20th pick, which I don't think. I think it might be lower than that, but they are still a quarterback that they could probably take next year that's much better than what's available this year. So I think they should just hold off, not draft a quarterback, maybe sign one, and let the old players go. Don't try to contend. Step back a year and let the new coaching do it.
Yeah. I mean, from your vantage point, you obviously have a lot more. So I mostly agree, and I think that there's a sense where it's like the Rams, when they were stuck in things, they found their Sean McVay. I think the Steelers need to find their Sean McVay, a guy who's younger. I would say maybe mid, like 37, 38. Have a guy that you know is there, ready for a possible rebuild. A guy that's a culture setter. I think maybe bringing in, like you said, a defensive-minded head coach. I love Chris Shula from the Rams. Brian Flores, I think he was wrongly out of his Miami job. I think he deserves another chance to be a head coach in today's league. I think he'd be perfect there. And like you said, although people will say, oh, you didn't finally have a winning season, there's a difference from having winning seasons and actually being able to contend in the playoffs. So getting rid of Tomlin, I think, I agree, is a step in the right direction, because you need to get rid of that identity of being 9-8, 10-7. The Steelers, obviously, they're that top-tier organization, but I think they need to have a reality check. They need to realize that they're a good team, but they need to rebuild now and recool the assets that they once had, because they did it then, and that's why they were able to find Roethlisberger. That's why they were able to bring in Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell. They had good players at a point, but then they weren't able to finish the job, and now they just kind of stayed in this mediocrity, trying to win, but not actually having the talent to win. So I think, yes, I like Will Howard starting next year. He has experience starting. He was great at Ohio State that national championship year. You bring in some younger guys. But let me ask you this. If you go rebuild mode, where does DK Metcalf fit into all of this?
Honestly, we traded for him. We gave him a massive contract. And some of the contracts are a lot more weird, because we do have a bad roster. Like, not a great roster. I don't think we can contend with teams like, even now, like, we're just seeing New England get better, I think, with free agency. The Rams have a lot of cap space, which is scary. I mean, you're going to see all these teams that are actually going to be really good in the future in the NFL. The Steelers don't have that. They are buying into these. Like, we have the highest paid defense in the NFL, and we saw what happened Sunday. I watched all of this season. It did not look like the highest paid defense in the NFL. And I think this goes to show that it's like they're so obsessed with like having Tomlin's winning record that they traded for. You saw them trade for Metcalf. They did that weird thing to trade for Jalen Ramsey and got John Smith. I want to see that too, but you can go with Arthur Smith. But I think just with the contracts we have now, and I love players like T.J. Watt, Cam Hayward. I think they're I want them to retire Steelers. But it comes to a point where those guys, I mean, they're older. They're probably going to retire in a few years. I think T.J. Watt's already. We're seeing his prime dwindle. And if I'm the Steelers, I much as a lot of Steelers fans might disagree with me, because I was talking to my dad, because my dad's also a Steelers the Raiders call the Steelers right now and we're like, hey, like, we'll take Mike Tomlin off your hands and TJ Watt for the first overall pick of Mendoza, I'm doing that. I think you have to let things go. It's time for change. Same thing with like the Patriots with Belichick. Belichick won 6 rings with them, and they fired him. They let him go. At a certain point, you have to be able to change. They let their highest paid guys go. I mean, you have to. As far as Metcalf goes, I think you have to ride that out kind of now because you just signed him to a contract, and you can build around him. I mean, our offense is already kind of terrible. Like, so I don't think he's really going to add much. I think the thing we have to focus on more is just letting a lot of those like contracts on teams go, because that will create a lot of cap space. I think we should invest more in the offense because who's Will Howard throwing to next year besides Metcalf? Right now, no one. I'm feeling just retired. Calvin Austin's not an answer. Washington is more of a lineman, but he has some good plays, and we didn't use Fryerman. So it's like I don't know who we're going to throw to. I think Metcalf's fine on the team. I just think we have to start freeing up more space somewhere else. Maybe on.
I also think if it's Steelers, there is not a single person that is untouchable. I think if the Steelers, if they call and say we want TJ Watt, you can hear him out. There's not. If they say we want everybody, you can hear him out. There's not a single person that is like, guaranteed to stay on the roster.
I mean, Watt was the only X factor like player on that team, and he generated 7 sacks this season, which is, I mean, it's not good, but sacks aren't everything. But every game I watched, it felt like Watt wasn't on the field for most of it. It just felt like, we paid this guy what, $40 million. We paid so much money annually. We just signed him to like a 3-year deal for what? Like I love TJ Watt. Like he's probably one of my favorite players. But it's like he's not doing it. He didn't help us at all this year. Like so, it's like at a certain point, if a team calls and is willing to give like a contending team and they think that he's going to like make their roster and help their chances, ship him away. I'm fine with that. I think he did what he needed to do on our team. He's a Steeler. I think he's a Steeler for life at this point. So
yeah, exactly. And I think the TJ Watt trade could possibly be your version of the Herschel Walker trade. If you get enough assets in that trade. And another thing is, I think the way the Steelers team build this offseason is very important. Get the young guys in there, but get veteran guys in there too to fill things out. Because, like, from what I can remember, the Steelers, their main foundation was their defense being so strong tier, but their offense barely being able to put out 15, 16 points. It wasn't sustainable, and it led to these 10-7, 9-8 records, or like even 9-7 or 10-6. Like, at the end of the day, I think the Steelers, they have core pieces, but I just think they need a culture reset and a roster reset, because if they are able to reset this roster well enough, give it 2-3 years, they could be a 10 times better team than they were the past decade if they rebuild this correctly, because the draft this year is solid, but next year's draft is very solid, and the direction they're in right now, it'd be perfect for them to tank next season, get some recoup trades get some assets for maybe TJ Watt, see what you can get for the players that you have under contract, and then basically I think the Steelers' goal for this season and this offseason, stack up your picks for this draft, but also next year's draft as much as you can. The more picks you can get, the better. So
yeah, I think we have like 11 draft. We have a lot of draft picks for this upcoming draft. I wasn't even aware of. Like I saw like the other day, I was like, oh wow, it's actually. I think we're like 4th in like draft or something out of the team. And I think that's really good. I think that's really important because this draft isn't necessarily doesn't have as good a depth as the next draft. So I wouldn't even mind the Steelers if they're like, hey, we don't like some of the players in this draft, but we're looking ahead. We love the players down the board next draft that we can see. I wouldn't even mind them trading down and maybe trading some of those picks for next year's picks and really signing up on next year's draft. Because I think this year's kind of like you're going to have your clean slate basically. You're going to have a new head coach, you're going to have a new quarterback, you're going to have like all these new things. You're going to have a lot of new faces that weren't here previously. And you're not going to be able to win anything. You're not going to be able to win year one with that. So I don't like we've always been in like a playoff contention, and that's fine. We just don't win playoff games. I would rather rebuild, eat the 5-4 win season if it even comes to that for a few years. If I know there's like an end goal, I can actually see the light, because it's felt like over these last couple of years, it's like I've lived the same season every year, and there's been nothing done. So now that
Yeah.
I
No.
stand corrected. The only person you keep is Chris Boswell. You never get rid of Chris Boswell. He's your best player.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I agree. The worst thing to be as a fan and a fan of a team is to live in mediocrity. Like that's what the Steelers have been contained in for the past 10 years. Ever since I really think they lost that AFC Championship to the Patriots in 2016. Ever since then, it's been like the one outlier. The two outliers were the following season when they got destroyed by the Jags in the divisional, and then when they started off 11-0, 12-0 in the quarantine season, just to lose to Cleveland in the wild card after going 12 after finishing the season 12-4. So.
And that's another thing I wanted to say about Tomlin too. Is Tomlin great regular season coach? I distinctly remember it, and I think it was 2017. They played Jacksonville in Week 5, and that was the Saxonville defense. But at that point, they weren't really known. Roethlisberger throws 5 picks. We get destroyed like 30 to like 6. I don't even know what the final score. We got absolutely destroyed. That was like the good Steelers team. That was like the number 2 seed Steelers team. So I go to a game in person night, and I think this is against the Packers like right around November, and they're interviewing Tomlin on like the big screen. He's talking about New England. Like he was so obsessed with New England around this time. Like they kept beating us, they had our number. And mind you, we didn't play New England for 2-3 weeks. So I was like, why are you worrying about New England when we still have games to play? Like we have a game now. You're talking about New England, and we lost to New England. I'm pretty sure that it was the Jesse James. Then we got a bye because we used to be 2 seed back then. Like we played Jacksonville in the divisional round, and if we beat Jacksonville, we would have played New England. I really think the reason why we lost that game was because again, Tomlin overlooked Jacksonville and said we're focusing on New England. And I've seen Tomlin do that so many times where he would fall into a trap game and lose and play down to his competition because he would look ahead and see a division rival, see a good team, and they would lose the easy game. And it's like people really like Tomlin, but it's like you can't win playoff games like that. You just take it one game at a time, and that is why teams like the Browns beat us. Like we were 11-0. There were obvious weaknesses that year. I mean, I watched every game. We did not look like an 11-0 team at all. Like, we would squeak out these wins, but because they were winning games, they didn't care. And then we lost 4 to our last 5 in the regular season. Go play the Browns, who at that point really had nothing to lose. They were like the epitome of terrible for years. So yeah, they're gonna be playing with a little more energy than a team that almost rolled dead into the playoffs, and we got destroyed pretty much. I mean, the score was like 11 points, but we basically got blown out the entire game. So.
Exactly, and that I can, as the Eagles fan, being in 2023, I can speak to that 2020 season because that's basically what it was like. So no, but I think at the end of the day, with the Steelers, they have if they don't have a goal, they don't have like a goal now, but it can start by if you can start by fixing pieces or getting rid of pieces here and there, then it's only going to make things better down the road because I think at this point, it's with Tomlin being fired, they've gone into the direction where like we're gonna go in a new direction. It's the smart move. It's finally getting out of mediocrity, and like you said, the 4-win seasons might be tough, but like you said, if there's something at the end of the tunnel, then it's all worth it. I think, in my opinion. So, but before we wrap things up, I'm gonna ask both of these questions. Out of the 4 divisional round matchups that we have this week, which matchup intrigues you both the most?
I think honestly, I'm looking at them. I think they're all really good matchups. The one I'm interested to see really is after seeing how there's kind of 2. I like the way the Texans played against us. I'm really interested to see how Drake May and Mike Vrabel approach that. Because I think Vrabel, honestly, I like Vrabel a lot. I think he's a better coach than Tomlin, at least right now. So I'm really curious to see how he approaches the Texans defense that destroyed us for 60 minutes on Monday night. I think that's going to be really interesting. I think the Seahawks-Niners game. The Niners, again, they're basically going to be a score down an ambulance on whatever they play. And the Seahawks, again, new head coach, they've been doing great. But it's a divisional game, so anything can happen. I think that's going to be probably the game, at least in my eyes. So
I would have to agree. I do think the Niners Seahawks is going to be the best game. Also, just because I personally think that Sam Darnold plays in these playoffs because yeah, he had like last year with the Vikings, but this is a whole different ball game than what he's dealing with. And I am also really curious to see how JSN performs. I want to see how like the defense comes out to guard him because obviously he's probably the offensive player of the year and had an incredible season. But other than that, I don't really think the other games are going to be that. Like I think the Broncos are going to get absolutely hornswoggled by the Bills, and Josh Allen's going to be like, okay, this is my year. The Patriots aren't going to do anything in Texas. The Texans are going to show like their defense is legit, and then the Rams are going to just befuddle the Bears with Matthew Stafford, Nakua, Adams, Kyron, Higbee. All of that is just to destroy the Bills. So the game I'm most interested to see is definitely that Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm just going to continue to say that with the San Francisco-Seattle game. I really like that game a lot. I'm just going to go with a different answer because I just think Chicago's so weird that the Rams could literally be up 28-7 at halftime, and Chicago could win 35-31. Chicago's inability to figure out what team is going to show up on that field every week, I think, what is make this matchup, I think, the most intriguing because I like both offenses when they're firing on all cylinders. Chicago's has been one of the best. Ben Johnson is a mastermind. Sean McVay and what he's been able to do with that Rams offense is absolutely insane. Both haven't played this year yet, which I am excited to see for the first time this year. It's the last game of the divisional round. It's 6:30 on NBC. Usually they like to leave those slots for games that like usually have the most intrigue. So I think this game it's going to come down to the wire, and I think it's going to come down to if the Rams can sustain their offense. Because if the Rams have sustained offense, this game is going to be a cakewalk for them. Because if Matthew Stafford isn't turning over the ball, he's getting it to his receivers. Devontae Adams is now more acclimated back into the offense now that he's healthy. And Caleb Williams, this is your test now, buddy. There's no fooling around in this game. If Matthew Stafford is on his game, you're going to have to be on your game too. And then the defenses. Both defenses I am very concerned about because both defenses have been very issued with what they've done on the defensive side of the ball and how they've been running things schematically. So, but I like that. I like the choice of San Francisco and Seattle because another thing, the 49ers, they have nothing to lose right now. They are shocked where they are right now. They are exceeding expectations through the roof. Brock Purdy, he's looked better than he has in seasons past with what he's able to do with what he has. Obviously, DeMarcus Robinson pulled a 100-yard game out against the Eagles, which was insane. You have Kendrick Bourne. If Ricky Pearsall is able to come back, that is huge for them. Absolutely huge. Kittle losing them is huge. But Jake Tonches didn't play bad when he was stepped into the role for Kittle, and he's been practicing as the tight end 1 all this week. And another thing, Fred Warner's practice window opened up this week, and if that animal is able to come back into this defense, that's exactly what they need. So,
I was going to say, even if he can't play this week, it motivates them to try to win because I think they're going to get him back to the championship if they make it. And knowing they have reinforcements on the way, I think is going to motivate them a little bit.
Exactly. And they're facing the perfect quarterback that likes to fold under pressure. So, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah. But before we wrap things up, is there any closing points you guys want to mention about anything that you have? Or
Terrible. He's not going to do anything. I want to reinstate this. He sucks. I hate Bo Nix with every fiber of me. He shouldn't be the Giants. He shouldn't even be in the best. He's terrible. He's put in a sack, and he's getting carried by this team, and he's full. I could go for hours. That's just right.
yeah. Yeah.
I don't like Bo Nix. I think he's terrible. But yeah, Rams or Seahawks are winning the Super Bowl. You can say it. Texans versus either Rams or Seahawks or even the Bills. Those are my 4. But I think this is Stafford around the 2.
Okay.
Going off what he says, my closing remark, I think Bo Nix isn't an elite quarterback by any means, but the defense of the Broncos is so good. I think as long as he can avoid making that crucial mistake and avoid just game manage, I think the Broncos have as much of a chance as anybody in the AFC beat the Bills. So we'll have to see. It's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a pretty good game, in my opinion. But I think all the games is going to be pretty good.
Yeah, I think